Hello and welcome to the PokerStrategy.com Team Liquid Star League. I am Artosis. Alongside me is Tasteless. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, guys. It's good to be with you again. And what a bunch of exciting matches we have coming up here in just a little bit.
That's right. We have the first match for today. Let's take a little talk about that. It is going to be White Raw against Kabal. Now, these two, both Protoss players, and White Raw, wow, what a great player. Kabal, a little bit underrated, but let's take a look at the map order first and
Certainly.
see where we're going to see these PvPs before we actually get really into these players. We have map number 1, Andromeda. Map number 2, Neo Tornado. Map number 3, Outsider SE. And then, if needed, 4 Destination and 5 Fighting Spirit.
Look, I got a history with both of these guys. Kabal was a player that I actually grew up playing with. White Raw was a player I actually grew up studying. So one thing I can say certainly is that I think they are both very talented. Kabal, a little bit of a mind game player. White Raw is certainly somebody that has a lot of experience when it comes to live games.
That is right. So let's take a look at Kabal's screen here. Kabal, alright, this guy, he's also known as TT1 for anyone who's followed the scene for a while. He is a rehabilitated hacker. He was a very well-known hacker for quite a while. But now this kid is legit. We see that his notable accomplishments include beating Avi Lovau, a very strong Zerg, the best Danish player ever, and also taking out Strelok 3-1. Strelok, a top 16 guy from before, a WCG bronze medalist, etc.
I think Kabal is one of these guys who really understands the mind game of StarCraft. He's somebody who, while he doesn't have the best reputation, let's just put that aside for a second because there's actually a lot of great players, especially from Canada, actually, who don't have the best reputations out there, who are still very talented, very skilled. And here he is now. He's legitimized himself. There's no question that he's gotten this far. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he's doing. But Protoss versus Protoss against an opponent like this, it's going to take 110% of his skill to really progress forward.
That's right, but you know what? TT1 actually, or Kabal, if we call him TT1, sorry, we've known this guy a long time.
Very
so
long.
it kind of slides right off the tongue when talking about him. But anyways, this guy is actually really good Protoss versus Protoss. It's just kind of a side effect that happens when you are a rehabilitated hacker. You learn the mirror matchup and you know the timings very well. So, I think that he's going to be a strong opponent for White Raw. But, White Raw, this guy is a legend. Let's take a look at his screen.
Now, you get a player like White Raw. This is pretty much one of the most established Protoss players outside of Korea. He's been around for a very long time. He's somebody who clearly, to anybody who plays StarCraft, whether you play Zerg, Terran, or Protoss, he's somebody who knows the game so damn well that there's no question about it. He's good online. He's good live. If you can take down White Raw, especially in a mirror matchup, you are truly a hero. So for somebody like Kabal, this is going to be the matchup of a lifetime, especially in the TSL, which is basically the biggest foreigner tournament.
That's right. I think TT1 is someone who could normally give White Raw a run for his money in Protoss versus Protoss, but White Raw, this guy, such a baller, man. He flies all around the world. He almost makes a living off of StarCraft, really, which is unheard of for some guy that lives in Ukraine. He is like a national hero over there. He is a foreigner hero. Beat Boxer on TV. He's like 30 years old. The most good manner guy ever.
And something else to point out is that, look, you and I have both lived in Korea for some time now. White Raw is somebody we actually see within the country training pretty often. I mean, whether he's going to China or he's within the country practicing for something, he's somebody that's on top of his game. And on top of that, he's one of these older players. He's somebody who's been around. He's not somebody who panics under pressure or gets nervous. He's very experienced, and he's very confident within himself.
That's right. This guy, he is not scared. He is going to play his absolute best game against TT1 no matter what. And, I don't know what else to say about this guy. He's just a complete legend, and if you're going to look up to a player in the scene, this is the guy to look up to, a complete role model as far as Protoss players go.
Hey, I can't disagree at all. In fact, this is one of the only non-Korean Protoss players I actually spend a lot of time studying. He sends me replays all the time. Very friendly guy. But look, I won't lie. Kabal is definitely the underdog in this case.
Certainly, certainly. Well, let's take a look at the first map. It's going to be Andromeda, and this is actually one of my favorite maps for Protoss vs. Protoss. You know, Protoss vs. Protoss, a lot of times people think, oh, that's a little bit boring. You know, it's kind of almost rock, paper, scissory. You know, it's a lot of quick games, sometimes stalemates. But Andromeda has this really neat dynamic where you have that extra base with the minerals. So we actually see a lot of really interesting games here, PvP.
One thing that's interesting about Andromeda is that it becomes less of a throat-grabbing contest in Protoss versus Protoss. In a lot of other matchups on this, we see no ramp at all because of the map, and it becomes a real slugfest, a real, maybe 5 to 10 second window for how you're going to tech. But on a map like this, you're certainly right. The standard opener is going to be gateway first while you're getting the robotics and the Nexus. There's a little bit of a timing difference depending on how much you've scouted, but you're certainly right. And from there, we have 2 windows. Because it's a lot of minerals at that first expansion, you can go Zealots first, but the most common opener is to get a Reaver, do a minor push if you think your opponent has any weakness, and then expand once again yourself.
All right, well, sounds good. I really want to get this started, and so shall we go, Tasteless?
I think we should hit the go button.
All right.
All right, guys, let's get this going.
All right, here we go. This is the PokerStrategy.com Team Liquid Star League. This is the round of 16, and we see that they are talking a little bit here. Anyways, this in the top right of Andromeda is White Raw as the red Protoss. In the bottom left of Andromeda as the white Protoss, we have TT1, aka Kabal.
Andromeda, a lot of people complain about this map. Hey, it's not the fairest map. The architecture of it can make for some weird games. However, in Protoss versus Protoss, I think this is actually one of the best maps out there. Unquestionably, you get the island, you get a great setup for a macro game, and I think after the first, 10 minutes, what's going to make it best is that type of macro game where you're fighting over the 4th base, and I look forward to this game. You know what? TT1's got his work cut out for him, but anybody can win this.
Absolutely, and it is worth pointing out, Andromeda, kind of an older map, and a lot of people use IC Cup as their main practice spot nowadays, and most of that practice, of course, is against Koreans who are trying to become pro gamers. So this is not a map that they would be willing to play, which means that these guys had to find their practice partners within the foreigner scene. So they are basically playing a very set number of opponents, and those opponents may or may not be overlapping on who they play. So, grabbing up practice partners for this match is also an important part of who's going to win this, and White Raw, of course, a lot more connections than TT1 does have.
I can't emphasize enough how important it is that both of these players are in cross spots, because this is a pretty big map. It's not a map where your first Zealot, assuming you do send one out, is going to do a lot of damage in locations like this. So if you do go Zealot first, and that's not incredibly common on this map. In fact, if you do go Zealot first, you're probably going to do it to kill off the first probe. But then again, hey, look, you got a big ramp. You can't just let, it's hard to block anything from coming into your base. So that's another factor in here. However, Getting a good tech setup, killing off the first probe is integral to your strategy. As far as standard practice goes, we're going to try to see these guys rush for that next Nexus on the high ground. However, deception, of course, a big component in this. We could see somebody try to trick somebody else. By the way, first Zealot here, almost blocking off that probe. And we could see he's a little bit wounded. One more hit would take him out.
Yes, indeed. We see that these two have actually mirrored each other pretty much exactly so far, both opening up with that early Zealot. And in fact, TT1 getting a second one while White Raw starts to deviate and does not get a second one, but both now chasing the probe around. And that second Zealot we're seeing from TT1 Tasteless, how is that going to alter what he's going for here? Is he trying to save up a little bit of gas, maybe a slightly quicker Robo?
Well, one problem is that he's not going to get that Nexus out or the second gateway. Nexus is most important because, look, in locations like this, you can't be rushed as easily. So getting the second Nexus up as quick as possible is helpful. In Protoss versus Protoss, the second Zealot doesn't help anywhere near as much as, for instance, an early Dragoon. However, getting a second Zealot out like this in this case says, look, I want to be safe, I don't want to be attacked early. It may indicate that you're a little bit intimidated, but at the end of the day, whether you get the second Zealot out or not, a bigger role is, did you kill the probe? The sooner you kill the probe, the better, because this, out of all the matchups in the game, scouting, in my opinion, is the most important.
That is certainly true. You know, oftentimes we don't even see the Protoss players. Oh, look at that. TT1 has just lost his probe to the Zealots of White Raw, but he did get up the Manor Pylon, as you've seen. In the meantime, both of them do have a Dragoon out, and it is time to see what tech roots are going to do, because both of them have lost their scouts.
The Manor Pylon is a little bit of a risky move because he did let it finish. It did slightly pay off. One thing about Manor Pyloning is that it's actually quite a technical strategy. You have to definitely keep the probe alive when you Manor Pylon, especially if you're not attacking, because, of course, the advantage of attacking if you Manor Pylon is that you're going to do some damage to the probe so they can't kill it quite in time. In this case, he got it up and instead tried to run around and avoid attention from that. I question if it did enough of an economic decoy. We'll see in a little bit. But for the time being, here we go. We see the Nexus coming up here. And let's take a look at our red Protoss player. Instead, a different variation of this. He's going to go for the robotics bay. He may try to expand the low ground.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's going to be really easy for White Raw to expand to the low ground. And notice he is getting an observatory, so he's going to be using 2 gateway ranged Dragoons and an observer to spot those minerals being mined on the high ground of TT1 and try to do something about it. But in the meantime, TT1, he is getting range, he is getting his robotics facility, so he's going to try to battle back there, and most likely what his idea of how to defend this is going to be to use his observer to snipe out White Raw's observer so that his probes can continue to mine.
Taking out that first observer is huge because if you do opt to make the second observer, it's going to really hurt you because you can't be aggressive. You can't take, for instance, an island to expand. You can't get that shuttle out to go Reaver. So losing the first observer is huge. As we can see here, an expansion on low ground coming from our red Protoss player while the observer pops out. So if that gets up and White can't be aggressive, and judging from these positions, they're as far away as humanly possible, White could be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like White Raw is getting ready to move out now. He has his red Dragoons and Zealots moving across the map. And, well, TT1, or Kabal as some call him, making his observatory, getting a couple extra gateways up. He is mining from this expansion already. In the meantime, White Raw's Nexus not quite done. But White Raw, he does have a slight larger amount of units. And I think as soon as his observer gets down here and sees what's going on, he is going to have to go down and start to pressure.
One thing about this matchup is that the gas expansion doesn't pick up as a role quite as early on as let's say, Protoss versus Zerg, or many other matchups where you're entirely gas dependent. We can see the red observer getting picked off here. It's taken out. However, he has gathered the intel he needs to kind of get an idea of what's going on. And for the time being, all right now White Raw has to do is defend and gain the econ advantage because there's more mineral patches at his expansion. He should be ahead. For the time being, either TT1, also known as Kabal, TT1, an old teammate of mine. I know the way he plays. He's going to have to expand very quickly or be aggressive. He can't do anything passive.
That's right. You know, he has these 3 gateways up. He's been pumping 3 gateway Dragoon for quite some time. And White Raw, you know, he's only had 2 gateways up for a bit. So I'm thinking that TT1 could actually, you know, put on some real pressure right now. We see he is moving down his ramp. And he does have the supply advantage at 74 supply over the 65 of White Raw. So, you know, White Raw better be careful here and be in a good defensive position. You know, this is a thin little choke point, and he could use the high ground to his advantage.
One thing about having that mineral-only advantage is that you can cut probes and go straight for zealots with the legs because it's not so much of a gas emphasis. Okay, hold that thought that we do see Kabal moving to the upper right here, and we see a little bit less Dragoons. One thing that White Rock could do would be to put an AI pylon in the middle of what would be this battle to block off some of these Dragoons, to draw the fire. However, we don't see that yet. He's moving up there, gathering up his army. This is going to be a critical moment. It's all going to come down to micro. If our white Protoss player does not do the damage necessary, our red Protoss player is going to be in the lead. Otherwise, it could turn around. Here it comes now.
And it looks like TT1 has superior troops here, and he has 90 supply to White Raw 73, and White Raw looks like he is going to get run over here. The Dragoon's just doing a ton of damage, and White Raw not drawing back in time, trying to get up that tiny little reverse ramp. Only a few Dragoons left, and it looks like TT1 is going to be able to take down this first game.
He's mowing him down right now. He should have pulled his probes out there. He should have had 1 or 2 AI pylons, as we talked about earlier. However, you can see that right at that moment, hold that thought, actually, we can analyze it further, but GG, great game. Unfortunately, TT1 made the better decision very quickly.
Well, well, well. You know, a lot of people thought that White Raw was just going to roll this kid over, man, but I am telling you, he does have solid PvP, and I'm not overly surprised that he took that game. You know, it looks like White Raw just did not macro quite hard enough. TT1 just got that rush timing and moved right in there.
Look, I'm a player that actually grew up on the same team as TT1. We're both from the US East server, which a lot of people are very cynical about. But he was a guy that when I talked to him about Protoss versus Protoss, he definitely knew how to gain the ground. Now, while he was caught in what was a very controversial situation earlier on in his career, he certainly has the knowledge, and he's turned that around. He just took a game off White Raw. So, look, it's up to White Raw now to prove that he really is the more established player.
Well, let's take a quick look at map number 2. It is going to be Neo Tornado. And, you know, this map, I haven't seen a whole lot of PvPs here, but, you know, it is a mirror matchup, so obviously it is not going to be in balance unless there is some sort of positional imbalance. But I do not think that any of those do really exist here.
I think right now it's up to White Raw to just really play a solid game. In fact, I think White Raw had the advantage had he positioned his army a little bit better and been a little bit more prepared to attack, but then again, most Protoss players wouldn't expect an attack and cross spots. You're very far away. We don't know what to expect in this game. What's important is that White Raw, for his own reputation, for his own sake in this tournament, plays a little bit more clean.
That's right. Well, you know what? Without further ado, let's get this going.
Let's do it.